We're going to go ahead and get started. The promise of AI is huge. Will we be freed from tedious tasks by near sentient computers? Or are we in danger of being replaced? I heard this morning that an AI generated Al Michaels will be able to narrate custom Olympic highlight reels this summer. Wow. Regarding the law, how will the legal market change? What will AI be able to do that now only lawyers can? What can it already do? Spend even a few minutes researching generative AI, and you'll confront these questions and probably some even more existential than these. Today, we're really going to be focusing on that last question. What can generative AI do for you right now, which I think also necessitates a conversation about what it cannot do, or at least what it can't do reliably enough. Thank you so much for joining me today to discuss targeted generative AI use for legal writing. I am Hilary Reed, and I am one of the lawyering skills and strategies professors at the University of Houston Law Center. I decided to keep this discussion narrow to targeting legal writing for a few reasons. One, we only have 50 minutes together. Two, I'm a legal writing professor, so this is my area of expertise. And three, I think there are some things that generative AI can do well to increase our efficiency right now without losing control or accuracy of the information that we are writing about. So let's look at this picture right here. Is this the future of legal writing? What I see in this Microsoft image generated picture, I prompted it asking it for an illustration of using generative AI for legal writing, is a serene and benevolent AI who has a pen like a magic wand. The young attorney is taking notes on the wise words emanating from the AI. I don't know if this is some far off future of using generative AI, but it is not our present reality. Instead, as Ethan Mollick put it in his recent book, Co-Intelligence, we should think of generative AI as an infinitely fast intern, eager to please, but prone to bending the truth. We'll come back to this idea later in the presentation as we get into our targeted AI practice in some of the limitations that we see with the generative AI. Just like you wouldn't and shouldn't take an intern's work with no supervision and submit it to the court or a client, you should be carefully supervising generative AI. Our goal, both for our professional responsibility and utility to our clients, is to remain the human in the loop. We are prompting the AI and then checking its work, not just going on autopilot. In our time together today, I'm going to briefly introduce the generative AI tools. We'll talk through some of the targeted uses of generative AI for legal writing, including examples and prompting suggestions to get the best product. And we'll discuss the limitations, ethical concerns, and some cautions as you may be experimenting with generative AI. I'll leave some time for questions at the end, which you can ask by typing it in the question box. So what type of tools are we talking about? Generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that can create new content, such as text, image, music, or even code by learning from existing data. It uses models like neural networks to understand patterns and generate outputs that mimic human-like creativity and problem solving. For text generation, like we will be using for legal writing, these are AIs that use something called a large language model. You'll hear that also referred to as an LLM. A helpful analogy that I've heard is to imagine a giant Plinko machine where each peg represents a decision point or piece of information learned from the data. When you drop a chip or input into the top of the machine, it bounces through countless pegs, which are the neural network layers and parameters, and guide it based on learned patterns and probabilities. Eventually, the chip lands in one of the slots at the bottom, representing the generated output, such as text. Just as the path of the chip is influenced by the design of the pegs in the previous drops, the output of generative AI is shaped by the vast amount of data and the intricate architecture of the models. Using AI can be unsettling, though, because we really don't and may never know how it came up with the responses that it does. We're working with an AI whose capabilities are unclear both to us and actually to its creators as well. As Professor Sam Bowman at NYU puts it, there are hundreds of billions of connections between these artificial neurons, some of which are invoked many times during the processing of a single piece of text, such that any attempt at a precise explanation of an LLM's behavior is doomed to be too complex for any human to understand. Because we can't get an explanation of how AI comes up with its responses, as attorneys, that can rightfully make us nervous. But despite not being able to see exactly how it works, we can become more confident and competent at knowing its capabilities and deploying it well. I will have a bibliography with source materials at the end, but Co-Intelligence, Living and Working with AI by Ethan Mollick was very helpful in preparing for the general background of this presentation. In addition to conceptualizing AI as that fast, eager, truth-challenged intern, he also introduced me to the concept of the jagged frontier of AI. We know that AI has limitations. Some things are easy for it, and some things are hard. The challenge for us is that the line between those two is invisible. It's not always intuitive to us what AI would be good at and what it's bad at. For example, AI is great at idea generation, and also it's great at creative tasks. It's not good at basic math. This is that jagged frontier. Also, a big problem, AI doesn't answer questions truthfully about what it can and can't do. I've asked an AI to redline a document. It said sure, but then as I repeatedly prompted it, I never got a redline. It couldn't do it. So it told me it could, but it actually couldn't. The best way for you to get a sense of that jagged frontier is to experiment with AI on tasks that you are already an expert in. I've included 6 text generating LLMs here. I've been using 4 out of the 6 of these. I've not used Microsoft Copilot or Westlaw AI because I don't have licenses to either of those. But Anthropic Claude, OpenAI, ChatGPT 4o, and Google Gemini all have free plans, so you can get on there and play with them for free. But you can also, for each of those 3, subscribe and get a larger context window. You'll see on the far right column of this chart here, what I have, the 4 top are general AIs, and then the bottom 2, Lexis AI Plus and Westlaw AI, are legal specific AIs. The context window that you see at the far right column here refers to the amount of information a model can consider at once when generating a response. It's like the model's short-term memory influencing how much of the previous conversation it can remember and then incorporate that into its next reply. The context window is measured in tokens, which is how the LLMs break down the text. The bottom line for us, you don't need to know what exactly a token is, but the bottom line for us is the more tokens that a context window can take, the more that you can upload into that window and help guide the AI to give you your response. The larger that context window, to me, this is really critical and pivotal in getting better responses from the AI. So I have subscriptions. I've been using subscriptions and preparing for this to the GPT-4 and the Google Gemini, and I'm getting a lot better responses with that larger context window. This is using that context window well is how you keep your truth-challenged intern on track. So context windows are important, just knowing the more you can give it to say, here's what you're using, the better. All of these AIs will have some ability to do what I'm going to demonstrate, and they're all subject to some of the limitations that we're going to discuss. You may have experimented with some of these. If you've done it recently, they're probably about the same. If you experimented with these a year or two ago, they've changed a lot. Um, so they're all going to be much better now, and the technology is continuing to improve rapidly. You may also have access to proprietary AI at your firm or organization. There are larger law firms that are building their own generative AI systems, which are custom built. These can keep sensitive client data in-house and enhance security and confidentiality. Systems that are custom built for law firms or systems like Lexis AI Plus and Westlaw AI have a better understanding and are taking into account more the confidentiality and privacy concerns that we have as lawyers dealing with AI. Oh, sorry. So using AI for our legal writing, there's going to be some general tips for prompting that we're always going to use in order to get the best responses possible. Always tell the AI what kind of person it's responding as. So give it a persona. I have been using the prompt as an experienced litigator, as a top attorney, or as a writing expert, or as a writing guru. You can tell it what kind of voice to use, or who it is that it is mimicking as it is writing its response. So I always give it a persona. You also can tell it what kind of tone to use. So as you're giving it a persona, you can say as an experienced litigator and using a frank tone or a persuasive tone. You could say if you're trying to give feedback, you could say use an encouraging tone. I did that in one example that we're going to look at in a little bit. AIs even, this is kind of a strange thing, but AIs even seem to respond to emotional manipulation. Researchers have shown that LLMs produce better answers if you tell them this is important to my career as part of the prompt. I haven't verified that, but I thought that was kind of an interesting thing about how these are weird computer systems, a little bit more like dealing with a real person in some ways than technology we might otherwise be used to. Next, if you have an example of a similar task that you've done in the past, put that in the context window. So we talked about the context window. You could give it something to summarize. You could put that in the context window, and you could give it an example of a summary that you've done in the past. If you like a specific format, you can give it those examples, and just like your human intern would be happy to have that example to follow along with, the generative AI will be much more likely to be able to give you what you want if you've given it an example of the output that you're looking for. Think about the tasks and determine if doing it step by step may improve the results. So this may take some experimentation, but for example, let's say you wanted it to summarize 5 cases and then create a chart listing them from most useful to least useful for a particular type of case. If you were working on a motion or something, it might be helpful to prompt it to do it step by step. First, give it the 5 cases and say, write summaries of these. Then take those summaries, have it put it into a chart. If you attempt to use AI to write a longer brief or motion, I think from my experimentation, you're going to have much more success focusing part by part and doing that step-by-step prompting rather than trying to have it create the entire motion all at once. Finally, you will sometimes find that AI gives you an answer that's not quite what you were looking at or looking for. It doesn't get it on the first try. Think of the AI as a co-editor and that you're engaging in this back and forth conversational process with them. For today's targeted AI uses, I've chosen 3 things that AI is really good at that can increase your efficiency in legal writing. Routine correspondence, drafting summaries, this could be of cases that are used in motions and briefs, or even fact documents if you're using a more secure AI, and finally, using AI as an editor or writing coach for your legal writing. You may be thinking, what about legal analysis? A recent study of the use of AI with legal analysis showed only slightly and inconsistently improved quality of participants' legal analysis, but AI can give us large and consistent increases in speed. AI assistants save participants roughly the same amount of time regardless of their baseline speed. And the participants reported increased satisfaction from using AI to complete legal tasks. And people were pretty good at guessing what type of tasks AI would help them the most with. Contract drafting was also an area that AI was helpful with, but because of time constraints, we're not going to touch on contract drafting today. But correspondence, summaries, and editing, these are good things that AI can help you with. And we can, I think, do a lot of these things and avoid still some of the major issues that people have with AI, including hallucinations where the AI just makes up information. I think a lawyer's worst nightmare. So less helpful or more risky uses. These are things I don't particularly like using AI for yet. First, for legal research, I don't think any of the AI is there yet on legal research as far as it really turning the reins over to the AI and saying, do my research for me. The data supports that. There was an independent study that Stanford published earlier this year and then issued an update earlier in June, looking specifically at legal research AI. And while hallucinations are reduced relative to general purpose chatbots like ChatGPT-4, it found that AI research tools made by Lexis and Westlaw, Thomson Reuters, each still hallucinate between 17 and 33% of the time. So this is from this month. This is a far higher rate than the marketing information might suggest, but and these hallucinations aren't necessarily the just completely making up wrong cases out of thin air. However, some of them are pretty significant errors like the wrong holdings, things like that. So it's a far higher rate of error than I am comfortable with. And with such a high rate of possible inaccuracy, I think at this point it's at best a good place to start. But generative AI should not be relied on for research without checking the primary authorities through the regular research platforms. We also don't yet see AI doing a better job than humans at analyzing complex or novel issues, and anything that's sensitive should not be entered into a non-secure AI, meaning like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. Those, we don't know what they're doing with that information. You can't ensure that that is being kept confidential. So as to routine correspondence, what I'm going to say, and this is true for a lot of what we're talking about today, depending on your current writing skills, generative AI is probably not as good of a writer as you are, but I can guarantee that generative AI is a faster writer than you. And that's going to be the trade-off that we're going to be talking about as we're going through this. So I'm going to be showing you some prompts and then the answers that I got from ChatGPT and Gemini for various things. You can see my prompt first and then the ChatGPT answer here. So for the first task that I asked its help on, I took about 10 seconds to write the 2-sentence prompt asking it to draft a professional email in the persona of an experienced attorney to schedule a call. In about 5 more seconds, it had generated this much more complete draft of an email. And if you have Google One Premium and are using Gmail, or you're using Microsoft and have the Microsoft Copilot, you can use this AI actually in your email system. Think about what types of emails are taking up time in your day, and with a little direction and prompting, could this fast and eager intern help? We don't see accuracy issues here because we haven't really given it facts to do. It's just a routine correspondence. It's really good too at either toning down. If you're really angry when you write an email, you can ask AI to help you tone down the email, or you could even ask it to heat it up a little bit if you want it to be a little more direct but it can make these stylistic changes while leaving everything else the same. I actually used Claude last week to draft a customer service complaint to an airline about an 8-hour delay I'd experienced, and it was really satisfying getting that done so quickly and not letting that take up even more of my time. So really, one of the best use cases right now for generative AI, I think, is in drafting summaries. Because in seconds, AI can generate a summary that would have taken an attorney hours, days, or even weeks to do. These summaries can be useful building blocks as you outline arguments or draft substantive emails or memos. Here's some tips for getting the best and most accurate summaries out of ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, etc. First, do not rely on the AI to pull the information itself from the internet, as far as just generally asking it a question. I think you're going to have a lot more help if you are the human in the loop. If you find the information, put your spotlight on that information, give it to it in the context box. That's going to be a lot more helpful. And if it's helpful to what you're doing, you can ask the AI to give you page references from what it's summarizing. This can help you fact check your AI intern. So just to demonstrate, I asked ChatGPT earlier this week to draft a summary as an experienced litigator of United States versus Rahimi, which came down on June 21st of 2024, just last week, and here's what it gave me. So if you want to kind of quickly skim it, let me tell you, this case found that the domestic violence restraining order that Rahimi had, that it was constitutional for, under the Second Amendment, for him to not have the ability to have that weapon, and it was written by Justice Thomas. So as you may be looking at that, you can see how wrong ChatGPT was here. But remember, look, I didn't use the context window. I just asked it for a summary without giving it any direction other than the name of the case. So it's wrong on the holding. It was an 8-1 decision. It wasn't unanimous. So it's wrong on the court count and it's wrong on the justice. What appears, again, we don't know why it messes up or hallucinates, but my theory here is that somehow it got the Thomas dissent confused with the majority and then made it a unanimous majority opinion, wrote the whole thing in that manner. This is pretty terrible. So what I did to try to fix this and find a useful way to summarize it is I pulled the Rahimi case. It didn't take me long to find a PDF of it on the Supreme Court website. Downloaded that PDF, dropped the PDF into the context window, and then now look how much better it does when I've actually pointed it to the right document to summarize. So it has the right holding, it has the right justice, and then it actually gives who did what in that opinion. I had similarly promising results with Google Gemini. What I did was I prompted it to find the PDF of the decision, and then I said, using that PDF, then kind of gave it the same prompt. It also did a great job with that. So my theory is that when you focus the AI on something in its context window, it reduces the noise of the entire internet and makes it much more likely to be accurate. So what types of things might this be helpful for? Long cases, long articles, long statutory sections. If you have a secured system where you can put confidential AI or confidential material into it, you could start thinking about your long factual documents and transcripts, things like that. If you can load a PDF into the context window, you have a lot more control out of what you're getting. Even still, you've got to remain the human in the loop. You've given it what it's looking at, it does the summary, and then you check it at the end to make sure that it is accurate based on your own reading of the documents. We have to double check that accuracy. So let's say I took that summary and I'm like, okay, I like this, I'm going to use it in a motion. What you can do once you've got a good summary, you can give it further direction on taking that summary and doing other things with it. So what if we wanted a single paragraph explaining Rahimi? This could be a part of an email, a memo, a brief, a motion, but it's still just a building block. I prompted ChatGPT here to condense the summary. Using this summary of Rahimi, draft a single paragraph explaining the holding facts and reasoning of the decision. Use tight and clear writing like an expert legal writer. You'll see, be really specific what you want the AI to do. Tell it who it is. You're an expert legal writer. You want holding facts and reasoning of the decision. As you skim down through this sample that it did, take a moment, look at it. It's pretty good. This has created a pretty good paragraph long case summary in about a minute, and it's accurate. Some of you may be thinking, I could write a better case summary than this. And I would agree with you. I think I could write a better case summary than this too. But that's part of the challenge with AI. It's definitely faster than I am. And so for weak writers, what the data is showing is that for weak writers, AI is going to improve the writing. If you are an excellent writer, you are going to be better than AI at these tasks, but you're still slower. And AI has been shown to actually lessen the quality of performance of experts. So this is kind of a drawback. If you're an expert legal writer and you're doing this, it may actually make you a slightly worse writer, but its speed gains are for everyone. So if it took 30 seconds to make this, and if it took you 30 minutes to draft this summary, what was that marginal improvement worth? And was it worth that to you or to your client? And this is a tough question. I don't think there's an easy answer to it. For me, I might use a summary like this for something that I just use internally, just so I have it if I need it, or if it's just a really quick internal document, something lower stakes. But for high stakes legal writing, if I'm an excellent legal writer, I still am going to want to do a lot of these tasks myself. I think this is a lawyer by lawyer, practice area by practice area, jagged frontier issue. And it also can depend on the client's resources and willingness to pay. So let's move into the next thing that AI can really help with, which is editing. I mentioned it can be targeted here, and this is true. You can use AI as an editor, whether AI wrote the first draft or whether you wrote the first draft. So I'm telling the AI here, the persona I've given it is that it's an editing guru. So this is the same summary that I had produced a few slides ago. And it was pretty good, but I decided that I want a better thesis sentence. I want a better sentence to start that section that gives a principle from the case for the current first sentence. I want to tighten the writing style even more and only focus on the majority opinion. So you can have that back and forth conversation with it, editing its writing. You can take your own paragraph, drop it in, and do iterations as you're going. So this is an example of taking something from somewhere else and dropping it in. This summary here, I'm going to read just a portion of it. It's not good, just to not bury the lead. In the landmark case of United States versus Rahimi, the United States Supreme Court held that the defendant's actions were in violation of federal law. It was based on a thorough examination of the facts presented, as well as a comprehensive interpretation of the relevant statute. And it doesn't get more specific from there. So in quickly skimming it, you're going to see it doesn't mention the Second Amendment, guns, a domestic violence protective order, or anything about the court makeup in the decision. It's the most generic case summary you can imagine. And this would fit probably, a good number of cases where a criminal defendant lost at the Supreme Court. So not a good summary at all. This was not one that I used the context window for. So this was just another example of asking for a summary of Rahimi without pointing it to the context. Again, I kind of got garbage out from it. So I took this having given it that last one. So I took a bad one from one AI, put this is ChatGPT that I put it into. I'd already given it the context, given it the PDF of the Rahimi decision, and I said, you're an excellent litigator reviewing the motion of a junior associate at your firm. This is a paragraph from a motion that is giving information about a relevant case to your issue. Give feedback on the paragraph in an encouraging tone, but make suggestions that would improve the clarity, accuracy, and precision of the writing. And then I've copied and pasted that whole paragraph into the window here. So what you'll see is in the answer, because I asked it to explain the suggestions, this is how it can act as the editor and as a writing coach. 1, clarify the case's specifics and its legal implications. Amen. It needs to do that. There aren't nearly enough specifics. And so this is actually giving us good advice about what could be better here. 2, be precise about the court's reasoning and the precedent set. So, and then it has made a much better summary here after, as you're kind of looking through it, you can see it mentions the statute, it mentions what it actually was about, the Second Amendment, things like that. So we're getting a lot closer, and we can see that it can be a writing coach, particularly for more junior attorneys, people who want to bolster their writing skills even more. You'll also notice I said use an encouraging tone. And I actually think a little bit, the keep up the excellent work is a little over the top based on the quality of this summary to me. I don't think it was excellent, but I told it to be encouraging. It was very encouraging. You can have fun with this too. You can have it do a tone that's, I mean, this is really purely for my own benefit. I didn't include it in a slide, but I said, give writing advice in the voice of Yoda. Give writing advice in the voice of Chris Farley's character, Matt Foley, the inspirational speaker who lives by the van in the van by the river. Like, you can kind of have some fun with it. Why I think that's helpful, this creativity, this is something generative AI is really good at. Creativity, speed. That only took me an extra 30 seconds, and then I got a little bit of a kick out of it. It doesn't just increase your speed of finishing the tasks. People enjoy the tasks more too. I think it's because there's that back and forth relationship that you're able to, even though it's kind of an artificial relationship, you're having this conversation rather than sitting alone with a document, that white screen, the cursor blinking at you. With this, you're having some conversation, even though it's with a computer. You can also use this for just a specific, and here I'm using it for a specific paragraph, but you can also use it for a specific sentence if you've got a sentence that's giving you problems. What I've done here, you don't have to read this all. I'm sorry for all of these text-filled slides, but I wanted to kind of show you what it's able to do and what the suggestions actually look like. So I took a rule paragraph, a paragraph that's kind of at the start of a motion in that argument section that's about a third-party beneficiary issue. And what I see here, you're an experienced attorney drafting a motion for summary judgment, arguing that the plaintiff is not a third-party beneficiary to a contract. You researched and wrote the paragraph below explaining the rules. Give me 5 options for a persuasive opening sentence to this paragraph. Do not change any of the case references. So I told y'all I don't trust the AI for the research. So this isn't, I didn't tell it to write this paragraph. I didn't tell it to research this paragraph. I've done all that. I put it here, but I'm stuck and I want to have a good persuasive opening sentence. So here's the 5 options it gave me. Okay. Everybody has different styles. I kind of liked 2 or 4, and before I've used, when I've used AI to generate ideas and things like that, sometimes I'll use a little part of one, a little part of another, and then tweak it to make it my own. But this ability to generate lots of ideas can be very helpful. I have this memory of class earlier this semester where I was asking students to help think of different ways to say, what you're asking the court to do. And it was pulling teeth at some points. They just couldn't think creatively about different ways to say, what you're asking for. Generative AI, next year when I do that exercise, I'm going to have them use this for some of that idea generation because it can be really helpful for that. Finally, this is a bonus because it's not really a writing tip. This is some of you, I may have accidentally convinced you not to try AI. That's not my goal here. I do think there are things you can use it for, but I'm hoping that, but some of you may be like, oh man, there's still a lot of problems. I still want to do this, the way I've been doing it. Still, you can find a way to use AI. There are some things that it could be helpful for. So it's excellent at brainstorming tasks, like I just said. If you need 25 ideas on what to name a family law blog, in 10 seconds, generative AI is going to give you 25 ideas. Some are going to be good, some are not, but you can just get a lot of ideas out quickly. In thinking of potential questions that a judge may have based on emotion, that totally falls within this creativity and idea generation realm. I uploaded a motion for summary judgment here that had already been filed, so there's not those privacy or security concerns, and I prompted it as an attorney preparing for a hearing. I also prompted it to make the questions challenging. When you're in the weeds and maybe you have some litigation blinders on, this can be a great way to get some new and fresh views on your case. I was very familiar with this motion. I read the questions. I think they're good questions. This would have been helpful in preparing for a hearing based on this. So we're almost done with the content before I get to the Q&A. I see a few in there already, but I want to highlight some limitations, ethical concerns, and cautions. I've already talked about quite a few of these as we've been coming through the material, but I wanted to kind of do it all in one place too. So remember our eager, truth-bending intern? AI is trying to optimize many functions when it answers you, and one of those is to make you happy. And that goal sometimes seems to be more important than be accurate for AI. So as a lawyer, though, I don't really just want to be happy. Maybe I'll do the Yoda voice thing and that makes me happy for 1 minute, but like really at the end of the day, I want to be correct. And this is why we have to remain that human in the loop. And we have to use the AI as that assistive tool, not as a crutch. As we all know, that accuracy is critical. And think back to that first bad answer from Rahimi. The holding was backwards, the justice authoring the majority was wrong, the justice count was wrong. That was a train wreck, right? But what if the only fact that it got wrong was that the decision was unanimous? So it got that it was a Roberts and that it, was constitutional, Roberts' decision was constitutional, but what if it said it was a unanimous and it's really an 8-1 decision? That still bothers me. It maybe doesn't change the outcome, but I don't want to have that inaccuracy in my legal writing because I think ultimately someone might figure that out and then that questions my credibility and, is the rest of it going to be inaccurate as well? So I think just seeing that we can't put our trust in AI to get this as right as we expect to be as attorneys. And so in that sense, double checking everything, you start it with a context window, you end it with your checking of it. Those are critical steps in making sure you remain the human in the loop. Another really critical step in this is that AI cannot be used to fact check itself. There was that widely publicized case last year where the lawyers in New York were sanctioned for citing 2 made-up cases. What was the, I think, critical downfall that lawyer made? Asking ChatGPT, are these cases real? And ChatGPT, the helpful truth challenged intern is like, yep, they're real, right? Like, it said yes, and now they're world known for that mistake. So here are kind of a laundry list of limitations and ethical concerns. So the Task Force for Responsible AI in the Law issued its interim report to the state of Texas Bar. State Bar of Texas Board of Directors in December of 2023. So this is a few months old. I think they're still working on the final report. Among other topics, it focused on the lapses in ethical and responsible use of generative AI, including using fabricated decisions in 4 different instances across the country, including that New York example I was just talking about. Obviously, hallucinating entire cases is a big problem, but getting holdings or key details wrong is also a serious issue. The next on the list here, bias, is another problem that comes up with AI. AI is trained on vast quantities of human-created data, so biases that exist in the world are reflected in the AI training data. Companies have tried to correct for this, but it's imperfect. Finally, on the limitations, the more people that are using AI for writing, the less expertise we will have at writing without it, which gives less of the control that is necessary. It tends to clump everyone together in the writing as well. If everybody's using AI, everybody's kind of sounding the same in some ways. It can bring struggling writers way up, and it brings the best writers down a little bit. So it's kind of like thinking, you know, as a professor, I'm like, everybody kind of becomes a B+, A- writer. And in a competitive field, that can help some and hurt others. And we're certainly thinking about this a lot in legal education. So the task force also identifies the risk of ineffective assistance of counsel. This can look like attorneys not remaining that human in the loop and going on autopilot. This is a huge risk. Failing to fact check and review all the AI output is a real problem. And honestly, it's a very likely problem to continue because people do tend to go on autopilot when they start using AI. There's a study out of MIT where the vast majority of participants who were using AI did not even bother to edit the AI's output at all. Another study shows that recruiters who used high quality AI become lazy, careless, and less skilled in their own judgment. So we're going to be pushing against the tide of, you know, wanting to stay in the loop. It's a real danger to not. As to the specific ethical concerns, there's Rule 1.01 on providing competent representation. Second, we have rules relating to diligence, candor to the tribunal, and supervision of work, client confidentiality. We know that there are courts requiring certification regarding use of AI, saying that it wasn't used or anything that was created by AI was fact-checked by an actual human. There's failure to safeguard client information, reasonableness of fees, meaning that if a task used to take 4 hours and now it takes 20 minutes because you prompted it well, you got the AI, then you took 15 minutes to edit it, what you got, you can only charge the client for that 20 minutes. And this may ultimately change some fee structures. There's also cutting edge intellectual property issues here. Suits relating to copyright violation in the training data, ownership of text created by AI. These are big questions. And some of these are answered in different ways in different jurisdictions right now. It's very much an evolving field. Some of these concerns are serious on the whole list. These are very serious concerns. And they require us to be thoughtful about how we implement generative AI into our practice. But I think the promise of increased efficiency and maybe even some job satisfaction is worth it as long as we stay committed to being the human in the loop and not letting our eager intern take full control of the reins. So thank you so much. This is my bibliography. If you want to take a screenshot of it, or I'm happy to provide it. My email is on the last slide. Let me open up the questions and take a look at those while you can look through this list of books and articles that were really helpful to me in preparing for this. So, okay. The first question that I received via email is, does anyone know of or has anyone heard of law enforcement using AI to create law enforcement offense reports and concerns? So I quickly had a chance to look at that before this started, and it appears that that is being marketed as a possible use. Like the thing I saw had to do with taking body camera footage, having AI write a report off of it, and then ostensibly the police reviewing that and then filing the report after having edited it. I think all the caveats I've been talking about accuracy and about human control really come into play with that, because there will be a temptation when people are feeling time pressed and overworked to not do that last step of reviewing it carefully. So I certainly have some concerns about whether the human will stay in the loop and the dangers that would be the potential dangers of the human not staying in the loop there. The next question, could AI run a search such as, please give me a list of all 50 state statutes regarding blank? Okay, so I would not run that on ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, or any of the other general purpose ones. They are known to make up statutes. So I think there's a high likelihood that they would just make stuff up for some of the states. For Westlaw and Lexis, they're actually a different, they're called RAGs, retrieval augmented generators, and they actually do pull things from the Westlaw and Lexis databases. So I think you could ask that on Westlaw and Lexis in their AI, and then you would have to go through to double check it all to make sure it's right. But I think that's possible. Haven't been on the Westlaw one, but I would not run that search on a other one. The Stanford article, Brittany, that is on the list here. It is the one, the Magesh article that says hallucination free, assessing the reliability of leading AI legal research tools. Are Westlaw and Lexis AIs better at not hallucinating because they have a defined, yes. So that goes to the RAG thing that I was just talking about, retrieval augment. So there's just a gap right now between what they're able to do and what they're saying they can do, I think. I think they will get better and better at it. I would think of it, to me, what I've been thinking about the Lexis AI Plus that I've been able to look at, and based on this article, the Stanford article, I kind of think of it as like a custom secondary source that can get me to some primary authorities, but it's not, I think there's some marketing that's saying like, this can write for you, doing the research and then writing it. And I think you're still going to have to double check all the research. And one big problem with Lexis AI Plus that I've seen is that AI doesn't have a great grasp of hierarchy of authority. So you might write a whole thing with an unpublished decision from a different jurisdiction. It's real. It's not hallucinating in the sense that it isn't just making up the case, but it's not really what you want, and it's not that helpful. Christian, have you come across any plagiarism issues when researching about this subject? Are there pitfalls? This, in the academic world, plagiarism and AI is a huge topic of conversation because there is no reliable way to identify AI generated work right now. All of the things that are there's no adequate AI checker, and the false positives tend to be higher for non-native English speakers. So there's kind of a problematic bias issue with that as well. So there are huge plagiarism issues in education. As far as in practice, we don't know exactly how things work, but it is generating new text. It shouldn't be giving you exactly what exists somewhere else. So that hasn't seemed to be a huge problem. There's a lot of arguments about copyright related to styles and artists and like books and things like that, but it's not that it's more on the training data side rather than the output that it's being spitted out as far as it being plagiarized. Okay, an anonymous question, can any concern that the use of AI can waive privilege? That's an interesting question. I think if you go back through and look at all of my examples, I didn't put anything particularly sensitive in as I was doing it. And so I still am very careful. I think if you're using the AI in Lexis and Westlaw, the same protections, you'll see that I put the security information for Lexis plus AI in there. You know, I would think it's sort of similar to running general searches and things like that. As far as it being like a third party with privilege, I think you're right. There may be a concern there. I haven't seen anything on that yet specifically. David, I like this question. Can you turn off the eager to please factor? Not exactly. I think you can ask for results to be blunt. You can tell it in its tone to be really honest. So you can do things like that. But as far as how it is hallucinating or like the data that's coming back, I think it's too baked in. If you say, it's really important to me that you summarize the right case, if you're using one of the general ones, it still may come up with the wrong thing because of all the noise out there. So as I was doing some of these searches, because the Rahimi case was so new, some of the things I was getting back still had to do with the Fifth Circuit opinion. And so it's not so much that it's only eager to please, it's also sometimes hallucinating just because it doesn't, at the end of the day, it's still filtering this information through that Plinko machine, and somewhere along the lines, it got off track. So you mentioned that use of AI versus skilled legal writers may depend on the resources of the client who cannot afford high dollar counts, it moved while I was doing this. Skilled writers may depend on the resources of the client and their willingness to pay. We need to protect lower income clients who cannot afford high dollar counsel. What guardrails can the legal profession install to protect the less wealthy clients? I think there's going to be a real positive use of access with some of this for access to justice as it gets better and better, because things are going, I think in that middle, that's going to help people who couldn't afford as much, and it's going to keep getting better. I think if we do this again in a year from now, there may be things that I have told you today don't do that next year are a lot better. I think one of the ways to make it more helpful access to justice wise is if right now the only retrieval augmented ones like Lexis and Westlaw, those are subscription based, and so probably only available to those who have counsel that can go through Westlaw and Lexis. So, it would be great if the cheaper subscription based ones, so Gemini and ChatGPT are $20 a month each. That's much more affordable than the legal research ones. So that would be, I think, an area, if we could find ways to make that affordable, people would have access to this more. Okay, thank you all so much. I have a slide with my email. I would love to keep this conversation going if I didn't answer a question that you had. So please reach out to me, and thank you so much for your attendance.